Hello, Professor. Good evening.
Hello, everyone. Samir here.
Hi, everyone. This is Jacob. Good evening.
Hi, Jacob. How are you? Can you hear me?
Yes, Samir, I can hear you. There are so many common people we know. In fact, we too haven't met, but we have in fraternity. There are many common people that we know.
Exactly. I'm aware. Even I was looking forward to meeting you.
Yes, very good evening and namaskar to one and all.
Good evening, Yashwant.
Good evening.
Hey, good evening.
Jacob, so great to see you.
Samir sir, good evening. Manoj.
Good evening, Manoj. How are you?
Good sir. How are you, sir?
I'm well, thank you. Good to be here.
Yeah.
Hi, Samir ji, how are you?
Hello, everyone. I'd like to begin the session. So we'd like to extend a warm welcome to all attendees of Samanvaya Chapter 3, Annual HR Conclave of IIM Kashipur. As we all know, Samanvaya stands for coordination and integration of exceptional ideas, innovation, and practices for the purpose of achieving desired objectives. In the last 1.5 years, we have experienced industry-wide disruption of traditional practices, making it a necessity for everyone to adapt to Industry 4.0. Keeping this in mind, the theme of the conclave is the paradigm of 4.0, with a focus on transformation of human capital through agile leadership, risk resilience, and reimagination. Without any further ado, we would like to introduce our guests.
Our first guest of the evening is Mr. Samir Nagarajan. He is the current Global President HR of Cadila Pharmaceuticals with over 33 years of experience and has held key positions in companies like Cadila Pharmaceuticals, Hindustan Unilever, Dabur, AstraZeneca Pharma, and many more. He is an esteemed alumnus of 𝐒𝐴𝐳𝐼 Some of his personal areas of interest include organizational and personal change management, learning and development, diversity and inclusion. So it is a firm believer in change from the inside as the only sustainable change in the long term, whether individual or organizational. Thank you so much, sir, for gracing us with your presence.
Thank you. Thank you all. I'm delighted to be here.
Next, we have on board is Dr. Bhanu Kumar Parmar, who is currently the HR Head Vice President at Ultratech Cements. He has over 34 years of experience in the private and the government sector combined. He has served in BPCL for 17 years, after which he worked in organizations such as 𝐒𝐽𝐻 & Co., Reliance Industries Limited, and Reliance Communication. Sir has completed his fellowship from the Academy of Human Resource Development with a focus on Salesforce performance management. So it is an organization development and leadership coach from Symbiosis USA and is certified in competency mapping. We welcome you, sir.
Thanks for the invite and glad to be here.
Next, we would like to welcome Dr. Manoj Prasad, Vice President, Talent Development and Digital Transformation of Reliance Industries. He has over 24 years of global credential in managing end-to-end complex transformation and organization change programs across the globe during business and digital transformation, corporate HR, and capability building. He is an alumnus of FMS Delhi and has led organization change and capability building digital platform with leading government organizations, UNO, and IT organizations like Ministry of Industry and Commerce, Tech Mahindra, HCL Technologies, KPIT, and ITC Infotech based out of USA and Europe. We are glad to have you on board, sir. Now we welcome Mr.
Thank you.
Yes. Now we welcome Mr. Jacob, Global Chief Human Resource Officer of Malabar Group with over 24 years of experience. Sir has worked in various aspects within and outside the realm of HR and understands the breadth and depth of HR across the international domain. He has hands-on experience in understanding cultural and leadership nuances of the global market. He has traveled across various countries and has spoken at various national and international conferences. He is an alumnus of TAPMI, Manipal. Throughout his career, he has tried to innovate his delivery of HR products and services that aid in enterprise growth. He is extremely hands-on and his approach to HR is about being pragmatic and providing customized pedigree HR solutions. Thank you, sir, for being with us today.
Next, we have on board Mr. Srikanth Kalyan Sundaram. He is the Deputy General Manager Human Resources at John Cockerell India. He has a rich experience of over 25 years. Sir's initial experience with corporate world is described by him through the proverb, "Make your hands dirty."
Sorry, the voice was breaking. Yeah, thank you. Thank you for having me over, and it's always a pleasure to be with students like you.
Thank you, sir. So the next we have onward is Mr. Srikanth Kalyan Sundaram. So as I was saying, sir's experience is described through a proverb, "Make your hands dirty, so learning will be easy." He is an engineer, and his drive to know himself and learn from the ground up began during his engineering years. He gained knowledge by experience, sharing, and teaching. Since his engineering days, he has had a penchant for teaching. He lives by the slogan, "Learn by doing," experience your learnings, share your learning experiences. Our next guest of the evening is Mr. Suvro Raychaudhuri, who is the Director of Human Resources for the Asia Pacific Solutions Delivery Center at CGI. He has over 20 years of cross-functional experience in IT and human resource information systems, HR business processes and consulting, and HR business partner across multiple industries, including manufacture, IT, and healthcare. A postgraduate in personal management and industrial relations from 𝐸𝐴 Jamshedpur, he has been associated with human capital studies and practice. Sir is a pro bono learning and development facilitator for multiple NGOs and has been actively associated with multiple international and national HR forums. Apart from this, he is a freelance writer and has written several articles related to the field of human capital. Thank you, sir. We are glad to have you with us today.
Thank you, Jumil, Shruti, my esteemed panelists, and I am Kashipur. Privileged to be here. Thank you.
Our final guest of the evening is Mr. Yashwant Chauhan. Sir is a passionate business and people leadership professional, having 12 years of highly diverse, enriching, and impactful group corporate experience in GAIL India. Sir has a bachelor's degree in technology from Jamia Millia Islamia, New Delhi, and a master's degree in HRM and LR from the prestigious Tata Institute of Social Sciences. He has also worked with Tata AIG Life Insurance, HPCL, Marico, and AstraZeneca. Sir is extremely passionate about learning and collaborating in critical areas of organizations. He is an author and has written a research thesis and several articles. We welcome you, sir. Our moderator for today's session is going to be Professor Rahul Kamble. Sir is the chairperson for Executive MBA at IIM Kashipur, Dehradun campus. He has completed his PhD in Management and Labor Studies from Tata Institute of Social Sciences. He has also earned his Master's in Philosophy from Center for the Study of Social Systems, Jawaharlal Nehru University, MBA from Mumbai University, and MA in Social Welfare Administration from Tata Institute of Social Sciences. His research interests are in leadership studies, diversity, and post-colonial studies. We welcome you, sir, and request you to take the session forward.
Thank you. Thank you. Thank you, everyone. And first of all, let me extend my gratitude and appreciation to all the esteemed panel members here to give your time and of course to learn from you. Yeah. So to start with this particular topic, first of all, let me appreciate my students for this particular topic, as this particular topic is actually the need of this particular current situation. Human capital, although once been considered as an insubstantial variable, today human capital, matter of fact, is recognized as one of the important factor affecting the success of the organization. And as we know that our Indian economy continues to move from the manufacturing powerhouse to one of the service industry. It is becoming increasingly more important to study the alignment of human capital, of human resources to business initiatives, and also to the strategic business administration. HR as a particular subject, as a particular discipline, and the practitioners who are involved in this particular discipline, they matter of fact, they have very well spelled out the haphazards of the human resource placements, and the empirical research also which is going on. So matter of fact, we cannot ignore the very concept of human capital, the very concept of human capital planning, and the human expertise, which is actually one of the element of the competitive advantage to the realms of the organizational planning. Here, basically, we, along with the human capital management, we, also, attempt to, emphasize on the role of, organizational leadership. Yeah. So organizational leadership, we need to realize, that in order to yield, some of the average returns, yeah, on the strategic directions, the investments, undoubtedly has to be, made, which not exactly limits to the education and the training of human capital, but at the same time, creating that particular sense of ownership, among, employees. That is also, quite essential. So here, from this particular conclave, yeah, we, wish to, learn, we wish to, know about how do the, how do HR practitioners, yeah, the esteemed panelists, which are over here, yeah, how do they practice, how do they lead, organizations, how do they apply some of the lessons of the current pandemic? Yeah, let's say, for instance, yeah, let's talk about resilience. Yeah, so resilience as a particular word, is been, increasingly important, not only for the individuals, but, also for the organizations, for the society to flourish in some of the turbulent times, in uncertainty, in risk, and also in an ambiguous world, which we are, living today. Intuitively, speaking, resilience, of course, it means, to bounce back, as, both individuals and organizations, they often face a lot of stressful situations, setbacks, or, failures, yeah, during their respective life cycles. But people respond and react to some of the stressful or, failure conditions differently. At times, due to these specific conditions, their well-being is hurt. Yeah, their engagement, levels may go down. So, how do organizations respond? Yeah, this is, a request to the esteemed panel members, to shed some of the interesting insights on, human resource management, interventions on employee, resilience. Yeah, let's say, for instance, how can organizations, apply the lessons learned from, the COVID-19, the current pandemic, yeah, so that the next normal, yeah, they remain resilient, flat, and also fast. Yeah, I mean, Samir sir, maybe you could initiate.
Thank you for that. I think that's a very good question, a very good lead up to the topic, Rahul. Thank you for that. I think I tend to look at it from, again, from a personal, individual point of view, in terms of how individuals handle ambiguity and change. So I'll come at it first from that angle. I think, so there's a tremendous amount of uncertainty that is thrust upon an individual when something like a COVID, like a pandemic, or even our institutional responses to a pandemic, which, as we all know, took the shape of a lockdown and, I would say a high degree of isolation, far beyond what anyone would have imagined or anticipated. Once in a lifetime, once in a generation kind of thing, as they say. Now, the question really is this: what really causes the uncertainty, the anxiety in me? It's the lack of structure. I have time on my hands. I don't know how to deal with the time. I have a particular way of dealing with the time under, within quotes, normal circumstances. They are not so normal anymore. And as you rightly said, the new normal, the next normal is, is already here. We are into hybrid work and so on. So in that situation of a lack of structure and a lack of frameworks to fall back on, I have choices to make as an individual. I can create my current situation. I can create the next steps. I can develop a structure around me, or I can sit back and say life is unfair. In fact, my choice of reactions will fall somewhere between these two extremes, and that actually, digressing for a minute, actually determines how resilient I am as a person. It's not about the stress that I undergo itself as much as it is my reaction to the stress. Now, when you arrive at the sense of structure for yourself, how far your organization, whichever social group you owe affinity to, whether it's your family unit, whether it's a work unit, whether it's a unit of socializing, professional colleagues, personal friends, whatever. This support that you get from these groups is really what determines where your primary membership in a social group falls. So when you say what does an organization do, for example, it could be as simple as sending out reassuring messages saying we're here, we'll take care of your health, don't worry. We're a pharmaceuticals firm, so a lot of the work that we did involved informing our employees about what's happening in the pharmaceuticals world in terms of dealing with pandemics, how we dealt with it in the past, what are we doing now, what will we be doing in future, and so on. And of course, the more practical stuff, which is around how do we enable you to work from home and how do we enable you to live a comfortable life under the circumstances. So I think to me, that's the first set of thoughts that comes to mind in terms of how do individuals deal with change, develop resilience, and build structure around them. I'll pause there and look for some of the colleagues to build on the ideas. And then, of course, if I have any further thoughts, I'd love to jump in when I can. Thank you for that, Rahul.
Thank you. Thank you. Jacob, sir? Yeah, please.
Sure. Good evening, Professor. Good evening, students. I think just to add on to what Samir said, see, just let me give the whole thing in perspective. You know, when the pandemic started, health became a state subject. Okay. And the government started putting orders on lockdown, closure of offices, etc. So at that time, what was going on in the mind of organizations? How do I keep my people safe? What is it that I need to do? Do I have a strategy? Will there be business continuity? So there was a lot of questions. Nobody knew what really needed to be done. Somebody took the lead. Many organizations followed that. Okay. A time period went by, people got used to digitization. When I say digitization, it was more of getting people connected with the office from home. That is what basically happened, you know, to a large extent. Companies were saying, you know, we've been looking at digitization for a long time. Now overnight we've achieved our strategy on digitization. But frankly, it's all about just connectivity with people at home and ensuring that, you know, that there was communication between teams, between the supervisors, and once in a way, the functional heads, etc., were having meetings together. This period went by. And then post that, what happened was organizations started grappling with how do we grow, how do we sustain, do we make job cuts, do we, you know, cut people's salary? So those decisions were also taken. Then there was a time where things started improving a little bit. You know, it started. You know, companies were able to see some degree of growth or some degree of sustenance. Then the second wave came. Again, tough decisions were taken, etc. And post that, we are where we are today. So now what's really happened is that today the tables have turned. Today, employees have a choice of joining an organization. That's what has really happened. Because most of the employees have looked at what were the terms of endearment that my company did for me during this time of pandemic. And was it appropriate enough for me to feel that, yes, the company cared for me, I was communicated to enough. And with all of these things happening, I felt that, yes, the company gave me enough importance, took care of my mental health, physical health, connectivity. The policies were made customized were changed, were made customized to various segments of our workforce. All of that is what many of the companies took. The digital model of, discussing meetings through, Zoom meetings, discussing, various formats of meetings changed, and even expectations of employees changed to a large extent. So these were the various scenarios which organizations have been grappling for the last almost 18 months, getting close to 24 months is what's been happening. So today, if you look at most things today, employees have a choice in choosing their organization. And that is, what has made that turn is only because of what companies did, as I said, the terms of endearment. So that is a big strategic change in, more than the company having the right to choose an employee to join that particular organization, the employer has the right to choose an employer. And because, today you have various choices and you're seeing various articles, McKinsey is coming out with various articles, HBR is coming out with various articles calling it the great resignation, or is it attrition or attraction? So I think what has really changed is we're going back to the earlier philosophy of culture, leadership, value systems have predominance over strategy, over your goals, over your KPIs. Once you get that fabric right, I think the organization is the right place. The employees know that, yes, they're in a safe place. So that is what has really changed as a model during the last 18 to 24 months.
Thank you. Thank you. Yeah. So, sir, please.
Sure, sir. I'll call you, sir. The rest I will call by first names. I always thought
Please.
I always thought there were farmers and hunters, and teachers were always very different. I come from a family of teachers, so I'll call you sir for the time. Thank you very much. I think 2020 and 2021 have been the so-called black swan years that tested resilience to a significant extent. But I also believe that human beings, to a substantial extent, are resilient from the time they are born. But so are cockroaches, by the way. I think there's an old saying we grew up with, kind of. I don't know where it comes from. That the wind extinguishes the candle and energizes fire, both. So in one way, the pandemic showed how agility and creating a strong, resilient employee experience is the strongest build up to what I would say anti-fragility, which is basically a superset of resilience. And it gave us the opportunity to rethink differently in terms of how to create that or kind of dig back into resilience. A part of resilience is we all are born with it. Sometimes we kind of overlook the fact that we have resilience, and that is where all these mental wellness issues and so on and so forth that we see coming up are the way it is. But when we dig back, this pandemic, I think, gave us a fantastic opportunity to go back to our core. Right? It's like all animals. It's like a very animal behavior. All right. If we take off your shoes and take off your formal attire, what we are is what we are born with, which is a very resilient facet of what it is. And I think the pandemic gave us a very, very good opportunity to do that, because it's for the first time, it showed to us that the CEO occupying the corner office, the mason who built the office, and the developer who got a flack from the client every day in, day out for a wrong code delivered are equally vulnerable, right? And therefore, when there were no remdesivirs and there were no hospital beds, we all know that we have certain things that we have to fall back in, and that was resilience. So in that way, I would say that the pandemic gave us a fantastic opportunity to look at our resilient selves, which is what we are, right? So that's fundamentally, but in the IT sector primarily, many of us who've been fortunate to be going along with the IT industry, we have grown with models like the people capability maturity model and have managed generations of workforce which are culturally highly diverse and resilient. So we applied certain straight principles on resilience and to build resilience and to build employee experience that built up a workforce of resilience and a resilient team and resilient individuals. It's about certain simple principles, right? Like policies are not written in rock and require agile actions going above and beyond to support our employees. And so on and so forth. We dug into data. We did a substantial amount of analysis that we never did before, and I think that made us all the more stronger, all the more resilient. The way I see it. So I'll stop by at this point in time and possibly add a few more perspectives on this topic.
Thank you. Yeah, Bhanu sir, if you could share some of your insights, please.
Yeah, thanks for the seniors to take it, and I'll just pick up from Suvro what he said, that we to an extent have reptile mind, and the response when it comes to a challenge, it is either fight, flight, or freeze. So these are three models where we work on. So when it comes to resilience, we say we are resilient, but the response is this: you flee away from the and there are people who literally did that. There were companies, corporates, employees who got frozen. They were not knowing as to what to do. And there were people born resilient, or maybe the corporates where they were working had built them to see that they are resilient. I'll give you an example as to how people resilience is built by the organization. Take, for instance, telecom. You'll find telecom every year they'll change structure for the heck of it, just to make them uncertain, just to make them vulnerable, just to see that people get into different roles than the roles they were occupying, the chairs which were there. You look at the office space, it's very different than the manufacturing space. And what we have learned from this pandemic, there are a lot of things that we have learned. We thought flexibility, we in telecom, we thought flexibility means, chalo kabhi ghar pe kaam kar lo. It's work from home. But now it's the necessity. It's the way of life for few. Employee wellness, if you look at it, it was employee benefit. It's now the core of the business. You require a person, employee who's safe and healthy. And you're telling him, you're giving them yoga classes, you're giving them mindfulness classes. Is the engagement principle changed? Earlier it was HR baby. Now it has become business priority. Communication was sporadic, thanks to Zoom, thanks to MS Team and all those platforms. Communication, the people were upright communicating with everyone. And let me tell you one thing, since I worked in an organization where I had unfortunately, I had a opportunity to break down the entire organization and see. And when you break down the entire organization, you learn as to what happened when you were building it. Suddenly you find spanner in a wall, saying, what? The mason left the spanner in the wall. What happened? There were a lot of tidbits that we came to know because there was a good pause. I'm not saying pandemic was good, but it gave a pause to a lot of people and say, rethink, collaborate, look at the environment. Three months when we were in lockdown, suddenly people were breathing well. Suddenly bronchitis patients started saying, what a world, I want to stay in this world. Let's continue those lessons that we have learned. Let's continue those good things that happened. Yes, there were a lot of bad things that happened. Like take for instance, we did not have O2s, oxygen cylinders around. We have learned that. We were very complacent saying, chale jayega, gayab. It's going to go. And it came, I don't know how it came. It was such a devastating situation at that point of time. Literally tears in every eyes. You just don't want to remember those days. Digital, it's nothing that has happened and we brought things from moon or Mars. It was already there. Future of work, people were working. I think 3 years back, I met Indranil Roy of Deloitte in Singapore. And he was talking about future of work at that point of time. And we had already embraced that and we were doing that. But it accelerated in this period. And we need to know as to, in terms of leadership style also. Just imagine, wo kar lo, ye kar lo. The command and control type of leadership changed suddenly to be an empathetic, compassionate, caring for people, mindful. I think whatever said and done, whatever happened, worst thing happened. But if there are good things, let's embrace it. It will help us to navigate in future. And let me tell you, friends, it's not new normal. It's never normal. It's going to get worse. The climate change, let me give you an example where I am. After COVID, we had 𝐸𝐷. Literally, it's going to take 1 year to us to come back. We are tired. We are out. But the resilience built in this place, the culture that we have built, it's not a magic wand of resilience. It's a years of effort that happens. There are some who are born resilient. But I'll just pause at that and then ask others to take it ahead. But there are, we are all resilient, but we forget it. So that tidbit things continue to happen, should continue to happen.
Perfect. Thank you. Thank you. Dr. Manoj, please.
Yeah. So I think very thoughtful, the discussion is going on, and we are all sharing what we have experienced and what we have seen it as a part of the entire, the HR journey. But if you see, this the pandemic which happened last year in the month of March, all of a sudden, and the entire world has gone for completely stand still. And I've seen all of a sudden, the entire, the gear got shift, and people started talking about the digital, the future of work, digital way of working, the new way of working, the platform way of working. A lot of things come into the picture. But if I ask, I mean, because still we are in the same positions. If you see it in last 19 months, I have not seen the office, and that's a big change. Why I'm saying not seen the office. If you talk about the manufacturing organization, they are all technology assets based and the man incentive, intensive organizations where people has to go to the factory or go to the plant. But still, we have managed the entire thing, and the only, I can say, the only answer to the entire challenge, how we have faced it, is the resilience, which is the DNA of each and every human being. You need to be resilient, whatever is happening across the world or even in your organizations, you talk of any culture, everybody got changed. And if I ask the entire, I mean, so the students and also to the faculty member, what you will, I mean, say, do once the, your college or say your institution is getting open. So somebody, somebody will say, I will go meet with my friend, because this particular, the Black Swan event, it has changed the entire world. Now you will started talking about, high technology, hybrid way of working, speed, well-being, human being, then, taking care of work-life balance. And also a lot of things are happening currently. But I will just share, something which is basically we have run with during this particular period. And when I talk of, my organization, it's a very big organization. So they are basically from oil to now they are, I mean, so they are into the IT, telecom industries and all. And day by day, if you see it in every week, we are also doing a lot of shopping by, buying companies and all. But one thing which we have seen it, I would say, in the entire journey, that is the digital dexterity. Because when I'm talking about the digital dexterity, that's the thing which has brought. Because if you see the organizations, we have all kind of, the mix of the workforce. Baby boomer is also there. We have a generation I, generation Z and all. So how to bring everybody into, into the same platform. And thanks to, a lot of the applications which has came into the picture. In fact, if you talk of my organization, we are using this kind of a platform even 2 years before, when we started talking about this pandemic and all. Like MS Teams, it was completely fully implemented. And the only thing which I can see, which brought a lot of changes in our organizations, that is being a HR, because I think we need to focus on the HR part. That is the 4E. So 4E, as a part of, I can say, being a HR, what we are, doing with our, our employees. And how, in an innovative way, you are changing the mindset of the entire workforce. Because you will find, the people, those who are a little bit older, in the organizations, their digital dexterity or the flexibility or mobility is little bit, a little bit, the slow in terms of the speed and all. But the people, though, the employees, those who are a new generation employees, they shift the entire, the gear, and they said, okay, if we are not going to the office. Now, as a HR, our challenge was how to engage our employees, because you have seen, once the market got opened, now I can say, this particular year is a full of attrition. You talk of any of the organizations, and particularly all the emerging technologies related organizations, it's a double digit. It's varying from, in some of the organization, it is going 30%. In some of the organization, it is going 35% and all. So it's a year of resignations. Okay. And why people are resigning? They are resigning only because they are looking for a more flexibility. They are looking for a more agility in the work. They don't want to go in a very bureaucratic organization. If I ask entire students lot, once you come to, to the Reliance, and the first promotion, you are going to get it after 4 years. So they will be not very much interested, because they always look for only two things: how much my organization is honoring what I am doing, and how meaningfully I am getting engaged with the organization. And second part is related with, what kind of the remuneration I am getting, because they are looking only for, what outcome you are looking. They don't go look for, you should do the monitoring. You come to the office, say 9:30 in the morning, do, clock your, the time sheet, and then by evening, say 6:30, you will go back to. So they are not looking for that kind of, they are just saying, you just give me the job, and that's the gig economy and the gig talent. If you see, a lot of the crowdsourcing and core sourcing happening only on the basis of the projects and the contract. It's not, that you have to be, lifetime kind of employment and you can work with the organization throughout. So I was just talking of, how we have taken care of the entire, this particular challenge. We first and foremost thing, the 4E I am talking of, enabling, all the employees by providing whatever is required. So it's basically, if he requires, some kind of a platform where they can conduct a meeting, they can do the collaborations part, they can do the brainstorming part of things and all. So we enable, the entire employees. When I'm saying employees, it is cutting across all the business formats. That is 1.5 lakh employees. They have been enabled with whatever the digital, tools is required. Second part is I think it's very relevant when I'm talking is the energy. So when I'm talking of the energy is basically I'm talking of, the well-being. So when I'm talking of well-being, it's also talking about the resilience part and all. So the entire organizations have, started caring of the employees, conducting, and not only employees, because when you're operating out of, from home and all, I think there is no boundaries. Where you can talk of, no, this is your office and this is your house. Because the people, those who are operating from the home, they have their lot of other responsibility which are related to the family. So we have not started, conducting some of the sessions where we are also involving the families and the kids, like a lot of, the painting competitions kind of things and all, because those are the things, which gives you a spiritual power, which gives you, the mental power to, to handle this kind of a situation. I have seen it, people has gone completely into a silos during the COVID period and all. It is only because of, you don't have any human relationship, you don't have any human contact, you don't have any psychological contact with the people and all, because everything is digital. So what we did, we have also gone into how to handle the spiritual part of the employees, how to handle the emotional part of the employees and all. Then third part was basically encouragement, because, when you're working, so of course you can talk of the digital collaborations, the platform like Zoom or MS Team or Geo Meet and all, but still you require a human touch. So how you are going to, do those kind of things. So we have also run with, a lot of the motivational program, where we have not only recognized and rewarded our employees based on whatever the contribution significantly they have made it to the organization. And if you see, Reliance is one of the organizations, even during the COVID period, they have made profit. Say, because of their, business model and all. If I take the example of one of my plant, because of only during the COVID period, within 10 days, we have changed the, shift the gear, and we have started, manufacturing all the PP, PP, say the requirement, basically the COVID related requirement, and, giving, I think almost 5 lakhs people has been given free, whatever the support was required as a part of the COVID, be it a mask or be it, sanitizations kind of things and all. So those were provided. And the third part, which is again, it's very important, is that now I think being HR, we talked a lot about, the employees experience, how you're, making your employees delighted in the organizations, how you're motivating your employees. Now we have taken a journey. In fact, it's now already in a steady state where we have started talking about the empowerment. So I can run my entire office simply on my smartphone. That's the, the technology changes which we have made it. And the second part is that there is no approval kind of things, nothing. Even, my team members, those who are very junior, say just pass out from IIMs and all. And if they wanted to, go for any kind of a travel, or they wanted to apply for any leave and all, it's just they have to open the smartphone, apply for the leave, and there is no approval is required. Just apply, that is only for the required. So this is how we are empowering. Similarly, if you get into the learning phase, where we have done a big change on that. Now the entire learning format is available 24/7 on your fingertips. So just open your, say the smartphone, click on, what kind of the model, where be it related with, HBR related stuff, or anything which is related to Coursera, anything is related with the LinkedIn and all, or learning, the platform got integrated with our company's platform, and we are providing this, because this is the time, where it's not on the resilience part, but you have to continuously upskill and reskill yourself, because that's going to determine your agility, your flexibility, and how much you're resilient into. If organization is looking for currently, they are looking for a people from a Jupyter lab, or people from say the superset, or people from a design thinking, I think we should be able to provide it, because that skills are very niche, and that requires a lot of time to to upskill the people. Similarly, when we go to the campuses and all, we don't talk of the traditional kind of skills. The only thing which we look for first is the attitude of the students, those who are working in that's the resilience. And second part is related to what is very relevant. Before I think we started this panel discussion, I was interacting with one of your students, and I was very happy to know that you have incorporated some of the very relevant courses which is required by the corporate, because corporate is looking for an X, and the institutes is providing something Y. So there is no synergy in between. But thanks to I think your institute, you have understood that what corporate is looking for exactly, and you have provided those kind of skill, be it related with the Tableau or be it related with the Python, because irrespective of whether you are in HR or in finance or you're into the manufacturing, these are the technologies which is a foundational technology which is required irrespective of any of the business you are. So with this I will say the only one thing that which is bringing a lot of changes, that is one is the next gen is focusing more into the self services, so no dependency on others and all. The second part is related with the greater flexibility, and third thing is that you should control your schedule, and this is what the Reliance is working currently. They wanted to make each and every employee self-sufficient. There should not be a very high dependency on the IT or a IT team who is going to enable you, but you should learn those kind of bare skills or a foundational skill, and you run your own business. With this, I will just stop and pause here.
Perfect. Thank you, sir. Yashwant sir.
Yes, glorious evening to everyone, and it is indeed a pleasure and honor to be a part of this great session amongst very esteemed panelists and also the future leaders of tomorrow, right? Just to share my initial thoughts on the subject, which is about transformation of the human capital through agile leadership, the risk, reimagine, and the resilience, right? I think the co-panelists, on this panel, they talked about several things which are extremely important. So I would like to just, add on to what they have already talked about. So to me, I think the agile leadership, in the context of the current pandemic, which has happened, right? Nobody thought that this kind of a scenario will emerge in the current global arena, right? Bill Gates, when he talked about in 2015, saying on top of his voice that this kind of a pandemic is a possible reality, nobody actually gave so much of deep attention to that critical advice, right? We have so many consultants engaged across the globe. Why they couldn't figure out that such a possibility could exist, and if at all that exists, how well prepared are we to mitigate the risk? Obviously there are things which are beyond your control, but there can always be proactive measures as a community, as a society as a whole, to mitigate such risk and do the damage control to an extent possible. Now, what has this pandemic actually resulted into? It has resulted into not just the loss of employment to the people across the world, but also disruption of supply chains, possible closures of various business units across the globe, right? And also a huge liability which has got completely transferred to the younger generation for the future, right? That liability is in trillions of dollars. Who is going to bear that cost, right? And this is where it brings me to the core concept of coexistence. I think we as a humanity have to understand that we have only two options: either we don't exist at all, or we learn to coexist. And I think we have no choice but to move forward with the coexistence. And this is where the pandemic has shown the true colors. We have all seen in front of our eyes that how the entire crisis on account of the migrant labor, right? You have seen that, which was not, to many people, it was not even an issue at all. But we have seen that, in a country, where we are talking about almost 92% of our workforce working in the unorganized sector. So we cannot no longer, we can just focus on the corporate world, which is about only 8% hardly, right? When we are talking about the economy, when we are talking about the country, we also have to equally focus on what the other 92% holds, right? And it is also a great contributor to the GDP. It has a huge, contribution to the GDP as a whole, right? So it is very important that we also, understand those nuances and also, work together to build those, agile leadership for building the leadership for the future, right? Now, coming back to the context, what sort of changes, this pandemic has resulted into. So I think there are several, things which have got changed. One of them is that the people are the biggest asset. I think that the point has actually driven to the home is that people are the greatest asset for any business, and there is no business without people. And there is people business, without which any business cannot run, right? So I think that is fundamental to any business organization or any societal organization for the matter, right? So I think with the pandemic emerging in a very different style altogether, and this being a very a black swan event, just like the Spanish flu of 1918, where several crores of people who had died. Even if you look at the current pandemic, the current data says that almost 24 crore people globally have got infected. Close to 50 lakh people have died. Let's talk about India. We are close to 3.5 crore people, getting infected, and almost 4.5 lakh people who have lost their lives. Right now, this is just the tip of the iceberg. Let's appreciate that fact, right? Because nobody knows what is the true reality. So it is extremely important in this context that we as organizations, focus upon building for the future. We have to, prepare for the future in advance. We have to proactively, invest in areas which can actually make our society, move forward in the positive direction. Some of the key, themes which are coming to my mind is how we look at the entire ecosystem, right? I think some of the panelists, and they talked about the skilling part, right? So it is extremely important. In fact, the World Economic Forum has recently, published the Future Skills Report, as per which more than 80 million people are going to, lose their job by 2025. That is going to be the reality. But that is one part of it, right? Another part of it is that more than 85 million people, are also going to get the new roles. Now, the bigger question to every country is, are we ready, with the infrastructure, with the capability, and with the ecosystem at large to take on that challenge, right? Do we have that, muscle or financial power, or the organizational, collective wisdom to make sure that our entire, workforce for the tomorrow, including our younger generation, are in a position to move on to those new roles, right? And every 5 years, that is going to be the new norm, I would say, right? And one more thing which is absolutely critical is that there is not going to be the normal, right? We talk about the new normal, but the fact of the matter is that change is the only constant. We are changing every moment. The pre-COVID normal will never ever come. It will never ever come. So we have to understand that we are living in a dynamically evolving world, right? So it's extremely important that we understand the nuances of the current situation. We prepare ourselves for handling those situations and move forward with a very positive outlook and with a lot of emphasis on the collaboration, right? And for that, I think the agile leadership will also be focusing upon the inclusive leadership styles, right? That's, I think, going to be a key, because I truly believe that diversity equity, inclusion, and belongingness is really going to drive the innovation in the future markets. Because unless or until we have that diversity, inclusion, equity, and belongingness in the organization, we are not going to allow our teams to collaborate together. We are not going to hear them, hear their voices, right? We are not going to allow them to, put forward their points without any fear. It's all about, those psychological safety at the workplace, the inclusion at the workplace, how we can, inspire the masses put together to collaborate together for a better world. I think these are my few thoughts on the subject initially, and definitely we can take it forward from here. Thank you so much.
Thank you, sir. The matter of fact, all the panelist members, in consensus, we could say that the very paradigm of human resource management, HRM, is actually at change. Now the emphasis is, more towards, economies of care. But at the same time, we also cannot escape the VUCA world. And, the turbulence which is being, circulated, which has been revolving around. When we talk about, resilience, as you all rightly mentioned, when we talk about resilience is a particular trait. That's what, Bhanu sir spoke about. There could be a particular trait. Certain individuals will be born with that. You could also see, we could, as others also rightly mentioned, we could also see resilience as a particular process. In whichever way, we see resilience. If we see resilience as a process and also as a particular trait, risk is also an essential component. It actually goes hand in hand. The reason being is, if a particular person, who is not exposed to some risks, cannot be said to be, resilient. Now, this is, particularly, present, as risk has, become so prevalent across multiple domains and occupational contexts. Matter of fact, managing risk, effectively necessitates resilience. So we have to acknowledge risk. Now, to minimize risk and to sustain, resilience as a particular trait or maybe as a particular process, in an organization, what recommendations, would you provide? Recommendations in terms of, let's say, what kind of organizational leadership are we looking at in future? Similarly, in congruence with the organizational leadership, what cultures or what organizational culture, would you recommend? Because leadership and culture, often goes hand in hand. And in future, if there is a particular situation, maybe, a situation which is more worse than that. So at that particular point of time, for sustaining the resilience among employees, what organizational leadership or what organization culture would you, recommend? Of course, to manage or to mitigate, risk which an organization is undergoing. Jacob sir, I would request you to initiate the dialogue, please.
Sure. Thank you, Professor. I think, see, you touched upon this point of leadership culture. Risk-taking in an organization, the model, how it works, will only happen if risk-taking as a behavior is encouraged in the organization. Okay, so it should start with the CEO and empowering his direct reports, and it going down the line saying that risk-taking is something which is a way of life in this company, and it is not something that you will be penalized for if the risk is high and the reward is not as high as the risk taken. So that is the first fundamental thing, that fabric of risk taking has to be percolated down the line. And that is, we have great examples of many companies that have done this. Even in our organization, to a large extent, the sales executive in the showroom has been empowered to take certain decisions, etc. So that has to be percolated down the line. That is one. Second aspect is, many of these companies unfortunately have this, enterprise risk management framework, business continuity framework. To a large extent, that's all on paper. The pandemic has taught us that whatever models and whatever you had basically was all there. I mean, it really didn't work. I mean, I've known Fortune 500 companies which have had great business continuity models, but not even 2 or 3 things from that model really worked during this pandemic. The other most important thing that you really need to encourage in companies is, which goes back to the first point, is that the person who is actually serving the customer or serving the stakeholder should be capable of taking a decision in order to solve the problem or issue that the customer has. So basically, if you look at companies such as IBM and some of these larger companies that have done it in the past, some of the reasons, when they analyzed and looked at the reasons why IBM was winning more contracts than some of the other companies, it's because people were actually empowered to please the customer. Disney, to make people happy, great example. You ask when you go to a Disney theme park, I always say this in most of my presentations to the IIM students. You ask anybody in Disney, what time is the show starting? What time, where can I get a bottle of water? Everybody will sing the same song. So there has to be an effort to encourage this kind of behavior, which has to get percolated down the line. So it has to become transparent, and you have to look at it from the perspective of that. I really have to, the values of empowerment, the values of trust, the values of, leadership by leading and showing the example have to really work in the organization. People have to see it working, because, end of the day, I'm sure all the stalwarts sitting here will agree that people follow what they see. They will emulate what they see. We talk about transparent offices, open offices, being able to take up issues. This will practically, all this happens only when they physically seeing the CEO or his direct reports doing the same thing. Otherwise, it's all good on paper. Like, many companies, quality policy, values, it's all nice tag cards, which, your employees have, it's there in your boardroom, all these things. But physically, where does it happen? So that is where it makes all the difference. And that has to be, as I said, I'm just repeating this, that has to be seen in frontline execution, because that is how the way of behavior, that is how it becomes a cultural fabric in the organization.
Thank you. Thank you for your insights. Yeah. May I request Dr. Manoj to share his insights on this, please? So you're on mute. Dr. Manoj, you're on mute.
Sorry. Yeah. So I think, addressed this particular enterprise risk management piece and all, but there are, few things which I feel it should be the DNA of the organization, because DNA is always determined by the leadership team of the organizations. And I worked with, some of the organizations in my past stint, like one of the organizations called Tech Mahindra, where there, one of the statement which was basically very core to each and every employee was that everybody is leader. So when they say everybody is leader, means, they are empowering even the small or the smallest, the employees of the organizations, they are leader and they can take the decision, because decisions maybe, it will be not always for, will be always for, the betterment. It will be sometimes, it will be learning for you also. You take a risk, by taking the decisions and all. Second part, I have, I've experienced in my, again, one of the previous organizations called HCL Technologies, where they say customer second and employees first. Because they do have a philosophy, where they put a lot of emphasis on the transparency, the speed, and the trust. And based on these three important, the part which was the DNA of each and every employees of the organizations, they have, built up, the billion and $1 billion of the organization, if you see it. The only things which, they were focusing on the employees. If my employees are happy, they can make my, the customer happy. If they are not happy, they cannot make it, in spite of, putting any kind of a pressure or whatever the remunerations you are giving to them, because they are all good pay masters. So every organization excel on the customer centricity part. Second is employees is the core assets, which you have to not only groom, but you have to, put them in such a, such a fashion or such a way that they should always contribute in a positive way to the organization. And that's how the organization, also build, because you cannot build, $1 billion organizations to $1 billion and $1 billion to, plus kind of organization, unless you have a very core kind of, the culture in the organization. So we always believe on, this smartness of the people, smartness of the business, smartness of the managers. The second part is related with the speed, because time factor is very important. If whatever we have learned it as a part of the COVID and all, which is more related to the, the risk and the resilience part, where we have shown a greater flexibility by changing the entire gear off. If people are unable to come to the organization, and that has, brought lot of good things to the organizations. I can give you my example itself. I basically, work with a very senior management who is a board member and all, and getting his only 5 minutes FaceTime in a week. It's a challenge for me. But thanks to, I mean, say this COVID and the entire leadership people, they have come into a complete digital. That's the big change, which we have brought it as a part of the, the entire overall HR, I can say, of the culture of the organization. Now, each and every leader of my organizations are digital, and they have all kind of a digital mindset, where they are enabling all the employees to, to follow those kind of things by setting the examples, because leaders always lead by, by setting the examples. So they have given the examples and the challenge to the employees to follow. And that's the DNA, basically, I can see, of any of the organization. So third part is related with, which we have learned it, if you want to fail fast. Because if you focus something when the age of the problem is 0, okay, or when the risk is 0, you just fail and learn. And then you, after learning, you get into the next scale part, and then you impact the organization. So this is how, my organization. So if you're developing any kind of a product, and we are also into the product organizations, we always go with a MVP version of the MVP is nothing. It's a minimum viable product, which covers a lot of the differentiated, the features and functionality, be it related with the service or be it related with the, the product. I can give you the example of, some of the example. If I remember, almost say 6-7 years back, when we used to buy, buy a SIM card. For getting a SIM card, going to the Airtel or Vodafone or Docomo, it takes almost, 3 days to get activated that particular SIM card. And when you go to the counter, some of the, say the physically outlet and all, they will ask you, do you have, Aadhaar card or ID proof with you? Give me 2 photographs. And, and then after 3 days, you are getting your SIMs are getting activated, and then you start using. So we have taken this as a business, as a pain for the customer. And then we said, okay, can't we do something, in a more smarter way, and without giving any pain to the customer, how, smoothly we can give a SIM card to them, which will be, get activated within, 3 to 4 minutes. And this was the basically the use case we have taken it. And you just go to any of the Geo Mart, any of the Geo, say outlet, they will just take 3 minutes to give you the activated SIM. They will take your biometrics, the finger biometrics. They will ask you, give me, digital copy of any of the Aadhaar card or maybe the PAN card and all, and your SIMs will be updated. Now we have moved to the next level, where, there is no SIM card, physical SIM card. It's all virtual. It will get activated in your mobile and you can use it. And that's the, how we have, changing ourselves also by focusing only one thing, that my customer should be happy. We should always take care of the customer's piece. Rest is, your success. So if you properly understand the customer and customer's pain, and come up with a solution which can address those customers. So that's, that's the only thing which we are managing, whether you say it a resilience or you say it as a risk. This is how we are operating as a business operating model.
Thank you.
Yes.
Thank you. Thank you, sir. Samir sir, can I kindly request you to share some of your insights?
Sure. I think I honestly don't have much to add to what has already been said. So there's some perspectives I'd like to throw on it. One is that risk has always been there. I think this is just a different kind of risk. That's all. I think it's unusually intense in the sense that there's personal risk, there's business risk, there's social risk, and so on. But as such, if you look at the human reaction to risk, it has been remarkably consistent over millennia, and it continues. So I think, is there an unusual nature of risk? No. Is the risk itself unusual? No. But yes, of course, calls for a different set of responses individually and organizationally. And I think important is for organizations to determine what kind of a culture encourages employees to feel comfortable taking risk, or individual participants in the organization to feel comfortable in the process of risk taking and experimenting. Primary amongst those that I would call out is an attitude or is a culture that makes it very clear that it's okay to fail. It's okay to make mistakes, especially when you are dealing with unprecedented situations. It's all right to say that, yeah, I tried something, it didn't work. Never mind, get up and try something else. And what is the kind of leadership, therefore, that encourages behavior of that sort and allows it to seed itself across the organization? And I think organizations have had plenty of opportunity because risk has always been a reality of doing business. I think there's been plenty of opportunity to experiment with how good you are at creating this kind of an environment. Using one, I think leadership, of course, is the primary source, if you like, this primary ingredient that drives the culture forward, that imprints on it and makes sure that it lasts well into the future in terms of how it plays itself out in the life of every individual in an organization. But there are tools as well. I think Jacob in an earlier context spoke about this enterprise risk management frameworks and management frameworks, organization frameworks. Yeah, I think I absolutely agree. I think if you take any of those frameworks as an end in themselves, they won't always work for you. But if you look at them as what they are, just another way of clarifying your thinking a bit further, creating the right structures, creating the right systems, and putting the right tools and techniques in place, they're pretty good. They're pretty invaluable in that sense, especially if you engage with them in that manner. In that process, I think using technical tools and techniques, getting the right familiarity with numbers into place across the organization, I think the aspect of psychological connect that you provide, the social engagement and the psychological connect that people hanker after in situations like this, I think leadership that encourages and works through all that, level 5 leadership, if you like, with a certain amount of humility, with a certain amount of respect, goes in and says, yeah, as a good leader, you can never say that I don't know the answer, but there are times when you have to signal that I know better than you when it comes to anticipating the answers here, but let's work at it together and we'll find something together. I think it calls for a very different model of leadership and organization, I think, in that sense. Yeah.
Perfect. Thank you, sir. Thank you for your kind words and insights. Perfect. Yeah. Bhanu sir, may I request you?
I think I'll just take beyond what Mr. Jacob, Doctor, and Samir said. Yeah, I believe it is all about visually felt leadership. It has to be felt. It has to be seen. Then only it gets ingrained into people around. Yes, the principle is fail, but fail fast and record it so no one else fails. Otherwise, we are getting into this model saying fail fast, record it, create the module in the learning organization, see that others, when they look at that, learn from that also. And I'll tell you one thing that I'm very fond of when it comes to building a culture, and a culture of courage of conviction. That's risk, courage of conviction, but calculated, not going haywire. And if you look at Skinner, Charles Duhigg, James Clear, they have said clue, craving, response, and reward. Till the time you don't reward and reinforce a behavior, it will not come again and again in the organization. You need to reinforce that behavior. And in terms of leadership coaching and mentoring, I have a model saying, I do it, you see me. I do it, you are with me. You do it, I am with you. You do it all by yourself. One more thing is, you do it and take somebody else with you. This is the way we'll build pipeline in the domain of risk taking, courage, and doing something very different than what we have done up till now. In terms of culture, when it comes to culture, मुझे एक हिंदी गाना बहुत याद आ रहा है. Oh, the movie is Dhool Ka Phool, and Mohammed Rafi sings, and a beautiful song. तू हिंदू बनेगा या मुसलमान बनेगा, हिंदू ना बनेगा या मुसलमान ना बनेगा, इंसान की औलाद है, इंसान बनेगा. The most important thing that pandemic has shown us, be human. Be human and everything will fall in place. You'll understand each other and it will fall in place. Nothing, you don't need jargons, don't need big framework. It is a very simple model. Be human and it will happen. I'll take rest.
Thank you. Thank you. Yeah, Suvro sir, please.
Thank you, Bhanu, and beautiful perspectives. So coming back to what role HR plays in terms of this question of risk, I think leadership is a lot about self-awareness, and self-awareness is about understanding how high I can jump without breaking a leg, particularly when there are 1,000 people watching and under my supervision. That's the most important thing. Not about watching, but particularly as a leader, if I have X number of people under me, how much risk can I take? And therefore, there's this little bit of terminology called taking calculated risks and so on and so on. But it's also about letting the people, as Bhanu says, that's the latest recall that I have on my mind. But my panelists before have also spoken almost the same languages. It's about when do I let my people know that the kind of cliff is ending in front and there's a point of no return, right? And that defines the essence of leadership. And as HR, our primary work throughout the pandemic and even before actually, but more intensely so, has been about training our leaders that you have always been trained under a leadership methodology. You have to take calculated risks, and history shows that people have done that at a particular cost. Now, this pandemic showed us that there is a point of no return, which in Latin is called alia iacta est. It means the die is cast, right? If our leaders are aware of that point of no return, I think that is phenomenal leadership. And I think from an HR perspective, a lot of us have been working in terms of silently influencing that. So for example, this big leader who's always been on horseback wearing a cowboy hat, and pardon me that figurative expression, who has always been trained to say, because you're a leader, you're supposed to take risks, you're supposed to lead, you're supposed to jump in and do it and do this. We had to tell this person, listen, regardless of what we have told the street in terms of what our profitability will be or what our top line will be, there is a point of no return where you have to decide, alia iacta est, the die is cast. And therefore, from a longer sustainability perspective, do I still drive my people across the wall, not knowing where they would fall? Or do I ask my people to say, regardless of what we have committed to the street, this is what it is, this is what we can deliver. And it is very simple, in pure project management literature. We don't need to talk about leadership philosophy and so on and so forth. In pure project management terminology, there is something called a product backlog. When we do our sprint meetings in agile meetings, right? And there's a kind of a perception that when we do agile company is risk averse, right? Rather the other way around. The agile company, the agile and risk are basically conflicting, right? If you are too risk concerned, if you're too associated with risk, you can't be agile. I think it's a very, very heavy myth. Because the agile framework itself talks about very, very simple things. If I am to use, I don't remember the entire part, but if I am to use a few terminologies, if I'm to recall a few terminologies in project management that we use, there's something called a sprint planning. And in sprint planning, what we do is we ask the team that please accept the work that you are confident about delivering. Right? That's the essence of risk management. Don't overstate and underdeliver. If you have a vulnerability, declare that. you don't have to be Superman and Superwomen with your underwear over your trousers, with a red cape hanging around, jumping from building to building. If you are vulnerable, if you're not being able to do that, please declare that. And that's the essence of agile risk-taking. And I think as HR, if we have been able to very, very slightly influence the way we think, the mindsets, in terms of what is risk-taking actually, and whether shoving of risk aside will make people believe, oh, okay, he is not the next generation leader because he's avoiding risks. That I mean, that is something that we tended to kind of avoid, right? So when we do in agile methodology, in sprint planning, in sprint meeting, in the daily stand-up meetings, I mean, everybody has to come up in a forum to raise issues, the risks as the team thinks that they can address, right? Regular demos of what is happening around. You are saying you're having something, but maybe the end user is expecting something else, right? And those are the essences of risk and leadership. But coming to culture, as you say, it's a big word. But I mean, if we are to break up culture in terms of what Edgar Schein says, 4 or 5 parts, right? There's a philosophy, there's observed behavioral regularities, there are dominant values, there are norms, and there's something else, right? Now, if the dominant value of an organization led by leaders or collective leadership is about not knowing where that point of return is, then it is unsustainable business, right? So the pandemic, I think, kind of, as I said in the beginning, there's this old saying: the wind energizes fire, but it can whoosh off a candle. It always is a double-edged sword. It always has a pro and a con together. It always has yin yang. And therefore, I think it was a fantastic opportunity for HR to influence that. I think it is not recorded anywhere. It's not metricized anywhere. A lot of people who have been working through the pandemic, a lot of the HR fraternity who have been working throughout the pandemic, had a very, very robust, very, very deliberate, very, very risk-taking attitude of influencing leadership to think otherwise. So I think that was our contribution, if not anything else, to the entire pandemic and the scenario associated with it.
Thank you, sir, for your insights. Yeah, Yashwant sir, may I request you, please?
Yes, thank you. I think great points by Bhanu sir, Samir sir, Jacob sir, Suvro ji, and also Dr. Manoj ji. Wonderful to learn from each one of you. My take on this would be that as far as risk management is concerned, definitely I think organizations have to clearly define their entire risk framework, right? Which is so critical, because it is imperative that organization have the risk management committee in place, right? Even at the top level, let's say at the board level, right? Do we have those infrastructure and also the associated teams which can take care of that at the organization level, right? That is very, very important. And to mitigate the risk, do we have the policy framework in place so that we are able to identify the risk, the level of it, and the frequency part of it, and how we can address those particular risks through proactively kind of coming up with various interventions so that we can mitigate those risks to a large extent, right? So that's how I look at this entire risk management framework. Let me quote the examples from my own sector, which is the energy and the oil and gas space. And let me honestly confess over here that though the pandemic has really disrupted on account of the remote working and the virtual working and whatnot, right? But let me also mention here that in our industry, right, we had no option to go completely remote, right? Because we are into the essential category of the business in the economy, right? We have the larger responsibility of not just making sure that we survive, but we also provide the energy to the other sectors altogether, right? Through in the form of the natural gas. We have a 13,000 kilometers plus of natural gas pipeline network right now. We are executing almost more than 7,000 kilometers of pipeline network currently, right? Then, so you have the city gas distribution projects, wherein we are distributing the CNG, which is compressed natural gas, the piped natural gas, right, which is called as PNG, right? So they were so critical, for survival of the economy, and you all know that people were locked in their homes, right? So if at that point in time, if we could not take care of our business, it was absolutely going to be chaotic. So I think the leadership was all about bringing that clarity from the chaoticness, right? So that clarity was so important. So what we did was that as a part of our business continuity initiatives, right, we made sure that the various pipelines or the project camps which are available with us, right? So whoever was working there maybe as a contract labor or the workman, right, we provided them the boarding and the lodging facility, so that they do not get disrupted through the pandemic, and they have the safety cushion available, and at the same time they are able to contribute for the organization and maintain that business continuity. Similarly, we also ensured that in our plants, people who were working in the 12-hour shift, for example, they were allowed to remain within the plant premises, right, and remain available for maintaining the business continuity for the organization. So these were some of the examples which just coming to my mind. Another example is on account of the collaboration between different organizations. So are we just looking at collaboration within our own organization, or are we looking at the collaboration at the sectoral level or the industry level? So to quote an example from my own sector, we have various companies like Indian Oil Corporation Limited, Bharat Corporation, Bharat Petroleum and Corporation Limited, Hindustan Petroleum Corporation Limited, we have Oil India Limited, we have ONGC, and we have GAIL, right? So what we did is, with respect to the skill ecosystem, to ensure that the skilling ecosystem is jointly, collaborated with. So we came up with this hydrocarbon sector skill council initiative, right, wherein we have collaborated together to create the Skill Development Institute for the future. We have already created 6 skill development institutes at various parts of the country, and each one of these skill development institutes is being managed by one organization, but it's being funded together by all the different organizations in the oil and gas and energy space. Now, what it is doing is that, number one is that it is obviously adding to the Skill India mission of the government of India, no doubt about it. Secondly, we are going to tap onto various unemployed youth of the country, right? So how do we make them employable? What are we doing as the organization, right? So we are moving in that direction, positively moving in that direction, so that we can generate the employment for millions and millions of youth going forward. And we have invested a huge amount of money in this initiative. The current skill development institutes are in the locations like Ahmedabad, where ONGC is operating, in locations like Kochi, where BPCL is operating, in locations like Raybareli, where GAIL is operating it, and in locations like Guwahati, where Oil India is operating it, in locations like Bhubaneswar, where Indian Oil is operating it, and in locations like Visakhapatnam, where HPCL is collaborating it, right? So each one of these companies is collaborating with these skill development institutes. They are operating these institutes at these locations. They are taking care of giving that that opportunity to the youth around those areas, those business operations. Say, for example, in our pipeline operation, we require the fitter, right? So we provide them those trainings, we provide them boarding and lodging facility, right? And we make sure that within those particular training duration, right, we make sure that they are not just employable, but they build that entrepreneurial mindset going forward. And I'm happy to share that many of those people have also moved on in that direction. So these are just some of the initiatives which are coming to my mind. Now, coming to the leadership part of it, you talked about the culture and the leadership. I think co-panelists, have brought out several, important points on that aspect. Now, my submission on that account would be that leadership is all about purpose, right? Leadership is not just about the positions. It's about your purpose in life. Are you able to ignite that purpose in people or not? Are you able to, influence the people in your organization or at the society at the large, right? To move in a very positive direction. How can we, engage with the overall organizational purpose, which is extremely compelling, right? Let's take an example of GAIL. We are working in the oil and gas and energy space, right? And for us, sustainability is not a term which we use in panel discussions. It is something which is part of our core business strategy. As a part of that, we are going to invest heavily going forward in technologies wherein we are going to convert waste to wealth. We have already invested in setting up plants for the compressed biogas going forward. Government of India has also realized this fact, and by 2025 there is a plan to go forward with almost 5,000 CBG plants going forward, right? So you can just imagine the kind of possibilities which are going to be there, right? Because we all know that energy space is going through a transition, right? And natural gas happens to be in a very sweet spot. We have the energy flowing from the electricity. We have the petrol and diesel, right? And so all these, and the coal for the matter, right? But all these, energy forms are peaking now, right? And maybe in the coming years, it is going to peak. So how can we think about, creating the future which is going to be sustainable, which is going to provide sustainable competitive edge to our organizations, to our economies at large, right? And this is where I think the concept of, the overall concept of ESG, right, which is about that environment readiness, right? Your responsibility towards the environment, your responsibility towards the social, space as a whole, your responsibility on front of the governance. What kind of structures do we build in the organization to make sure that people in the organization have the right behavior, that they nurture the right mindset for the future, right? And I think this is where the people professionals have a huge role to play. How do we shift that mindset of people to move positively in this direction, right? So that we are able to move with a very big leap forward. This is what is there for me to share. And I think going forward, even the scenario planning is also very important. Because many times, we as organizations, we are held back with several silos, within which we are working, right? So I think we need to, create the culture in the organization where scenario building is a continuous process, right? We allow our teams to, collaborate together to create that empowering culture, right? To make them, accountable and responsible, to allow them to think beyond the failures. I think some of the panelists, they mentioned about that you need to fail fast and learn fast, right? So I think learning is extremely important. We all have to be the lifelong learners, but I think learning is not good enough, right? We have to move from learning to the applied, the applied knowledge of the learning, right? How do we apply the learning within the current business domain, within the larger challenges which are confronting the global arena, right? Let's look at hunger index. We are currently standing at 102. Let's look at human development index. We are currently standing at almost 131 out of 189. Can we think about creating the cultures? Can we think about creating the leadership for tomorrow, where we are able to address larger issues, right? That includes the issues confronting on account of diversity, inclusion, gender balance, right? So many issues are there, and I think if we move positively in all these directions, definitely businesses are going to thrive, because we are going to create those innovative frameworks, because people are going to be having that inclusive leadership in place. Thank you. These are my some of the thoughts.
Thank you. Very true. Very true. The matter of fact, when we are talking about organization culture, I'll just sum up, what we all are discussing over here. One important aspect, is of course to create, certain safety nets, for for a lot of employees. A particular, a slogan or that has to be very well institutionalized within the organization culture that failure is okay. Yeah, we are bound to fail, but the point is, and rightly mentioned, don't record it. Yeah, I mean, record it, but make sure you don't repeat it. Yeah, it's absolutely right. The culture of empowerment, autonomy, having that customer-centric culture within that organization, along with the sense of ownership and autonomy, the matter of fact will make a particular employee more engageful. High in vigor, high in dedication. Setting up examples for the organization, for organization leadership, of course, at the macro level as well as at the micro level, is absolutely essential to ensure that any particular change which is initiated, that more or less happens in a very smooth manner. Leadership, at the same time, rightly mentioned, has to be experienced. Has to be felt. So, we could actually come up with this particular understanding that an excellent congruence, between an organization culture and organizational leadership will sustain the contract. The contract not only made towards the employees, but also towards a larger social contract. And these specific initiatives which you all have shared, the matter of fact, we all appreciate that. And that will undoubtedly, minimize the risk of reputation. That will minimize the risk of loss of control where a virtual employee is being, present. Similarly, what we also come up with this particular understanding that, to minimize certain risks, which are associated with, micro turbulences. Undoubtedly, workplaces needs to be reimagined. We have artificial intelligence, then came the Internet of Things. These two elements, they become the disruptive, drivers of change. Preparing people for new jobs. There was a demand of upskill which was taking place. Then came the gig economy. Along with the economy came industry 4.0. And now we have the pandemic, that's COVID-19. That absolutely requires a lot of reimagination, and I believe that the initiatives which you all are taking in your organization, that will lead to a very smooth transition, undoubtedly about that. And I really appreciate the initiatives, the thoughts which you and the insights which you all have shared. Now I would request Drumil, if there are any questions, from the students' end, we could have that.
Yes, sir. So there's a question in the chat box from Tanvi Khardekar. I'll read it out. Good evening, sir. My question to the panel is, how has the pandemic affected the learning curve of employees who are just starting their careers? And since they may not have direct communication with their superiors, does it affect how the values, mission, and vision of the companies are conveyed to the employees? That's the question, sir. If anyone would like to take it up.
Maybe I'll go first. I was just, sorry, go ahead.
No, okay. So I will just answer this particular question. Is basically, I think because of the pandemic, I think there is nothing we should get into the negative side, because so far the learning is concerned, I think a lot of the organizations, it's not only organization, but also a lot of the academic institution has, given a free flow of, the informations and the learning platform for the employees. And if I take the example of, some of the surveys conducted by LinkedIn Learning and all, I think in last 1 year, almost, 10 million people has gone for the new, the new skills, that is basically into the upskilling and reskilling piece, which are of course related with AI, then, the data science, then cloud computing, IoT, then NLP, the machine learning, the deep learning piece and all. And these are the courses, basically, if you see it, it's now, earlier it was all paid kind of things. But now, if you talk of any of the good, the learning platform, be it a Coursera or a LinkedIn or Educast and all, they are the bare kind of, the courses, which is very important for the students. And when I'm saying student, it's not the people, those who are working in a formal kind of education institute. It is also for the corporate people. It's freely available. You talk of Stanford, you talk of the HBR, you talk of the Harvard and all, everybody is, providing the free learning, the courses for the student or for those who wanted to learn and all. So to answer very specific on this particular part, yes, the learning curve has not got impacted. In fact, it has gone tenfold, better than what we were experiencing before the COVID. Second piece is, it's not impacting any kind of the organizational culture where the goals are fixed, where the mission and visions are fixed. It is still aligned, and I can give you, I think in last 1.5 years, if I take my organization, for example, we have onboarded, almost 60,000 people. I can give you the number also, 60,000 people, into the various business formats. That is completely, the digital onboarding piece. And I'm, HR being HR, I can also say that we have provided all kind of a hand holding, be it related with the chatbot, which is basically a virtual assistant for you by leveraging, this AI and machine learning and the deep learning part and all, because we have utilized, the technology up to any extent and all. Second part is related with, connecting with your managers or with the buddy who's going to do the mentorship. So that's a very rigorous kind of a program which we are running. And I think every year, even in this year also, a lot of the people got onboarded into the organizations, and they are being given all kind of a hand holding, be it a virtual, HR assistant or a virtual managers, because we have a best of the best technology which we are leveraging and providing all kind of emotional or a virtual support to the employees. Now things are getting into the next normal. That is, the offices are now opening and people are coming to the campuses and all. Now the questions with again for the employees is that how they will cope up with what they have coped up 1.5 years back. So now again there is changes happening, and we are trying to ensure, all kind of a hand holding to employees while coming into the the physical campus, and now they are coming into this. So it was just a shift from completely physical office to getting into a digital office. Now we are coming back to a hybrid way of working. So that will remain, in fact. Hope I answer your questions.
Due to paucity of time, I think we'll be sharing the rest of the questions with the guest over email, and we'd be glad if we could get an answer and we'd float that to the batch. We'd like to express our gratitude to our distinguished panelists. Yes, Suvro sir. Okay. We'd like to express our gratitude to our distinguished panelists for taking time out of their busy schedule to participate. The panelists have highlighted the best practices that are implemented in businesses, and the conversation would included insight on the 3 Rs and the shift in human capital trends to adapt to Industry 4.0 based on years of research, depth of understanding, and significant experience. And surely with the aid of examples shared today, the students have been able to see the topic in a new light. We would also like to thank Rahul sir for accepting our invitation to moderate the session and keeping the flow of the conversation going. It was indeed an enriching session, and I believe all the students present here today have absorbed a lot from the discussion, although we really hope it could have been conducted offline. We hope to see all of you on IIM Kashipur campus soon for further engagements.
Sure.
Thank you so much.
Thank you. Thank you
Thank
all.
you.
It's been a pleasure to be
Thank you,
here.
everyone. It's been a pleasure.
Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you so much.
Thank you. Have a great
Thank you.
evening. Yeah, bye.
You too, sir.
Thanks.
Thank you.
Thank you, Jacob sir, Dr. Manoj sir. Thank you, Suvro ji.
Thank you, sir.
Rahul sir, thank you. And thank you, everyone.
Thank you.